All right, I think we can start. So, hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming tonight. My name is Zoe, and I'm one of the co-organizers of 12 Coffee. This is a not-for-profit speaker series that aims to connect established industry professionals with students. For every event, we aim to create an environment of a casual virtual coffee chat, and we hope that through our events, you'll have a clear idea about your future career path. So first of all, we would like to thank one of our collaborators, Geckos at U of T, for bringing us the Canadian Scholar Strike that is happening today and tomorrow. So it is in solidarity with the WNBA and NBA players who went on strike for racial justice and an end to anti-Black police violence. The Canadian Scholar Strike also adds a focus on anti-Indigenous colonial violence. We're expressing our support of students who wish to participate in the strike and the scheduled digital teach-ins. As members of society, we all have our responsibility to educate ourselves, reflect, discuss, and take action against racial injustice. And we hope everyone can contribute and serve as agents of change. So you can learn more at scholarstrikecanada.ca. We're also very grateful today to have invited our guest speaker, Roxanne Nicolussi. Roxy is an entrepreneurial design strategist, consultant, and product manager based in Toronto. Roxy loves to solve problems at the intersection where business goals, human needs, and technology meet. By day, you'll find her leading the product strategy and design of emerging tech solutions at RBC. By night, you'll find her taking on passion projects alone or with her team of collaborators at 5Y Impact Collective. She also loves being invited to speak or facilitate workshops. I guess that what we did was the right thing. So one disclaimer is that today Roxy is presenting independently and her views and opinions do not represent RBC. You can also see Roxy's clients and partners here in the corners. So today, as usual, we're accepting live questions. Feel free to add or upload questions that you hope Roxy will answer on Slido with event code 12Coffee with Roxy. We also want to acknowledge our collaborators for the event. We are currently working with the Graduate Engineering Council of Students at University of Toronto, MSc in Computer Science with specialization in multimedia at University of Alberta, Aggregate Intellect, and Centennial College Career Services and Cooperative Education. So now, without further ado, I'll pass the floor to Roxy. Roxy, would you like to start sharing?
Yes, I will. Thank you very much. And thank you everybody for joining.
No.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So thank you for inviting me to coffee. Thank you, Leon and Zoe, for organizing this. It's going to be a pretty one-sided coffee chat for the next 20 minutes for the event setup, and then we will open it to Q&A. Some of the questions have been previously asked, and then we'll do some live questions as well. So I'm going to start off with my professional journey so far. Next is an overview of design thinking, or as I prefer to call it, design-led problem solving. It will be short and sweet, so please do your research or enroll in a course if you're interested in learning more. And lastly, we will conclude with design thinking your career before jumping into the question period. There we go. So, what I do. By day, you'll find me leading product strategy and design of emerging tech solutions at RBC. By night, you'll find me taking on passion projects either alone as a freelancer or with my team of collaborators at 5Y Impact Collective. Now, what is 5Y, you ask? A year ago, 5Y Impact Collective, which was then called 5Y Impact Lab, as you can see in the photo, was introduced. This came as a result of my dreams to work on socially impactful projects and my inability to tackle them alone. At 5Y, solving problems that matter means applying in-depth research in a problem space, mapping out the root causes of these complex problems, and identifying intervention opportunities. Lastly, but most importantly, we drive solutions from the ground up. That means co-creating with, not for, the people that are most impacted by the system to help us change it. We've accomplished a lot in our first year and got to interact with many aspiring social entrepreneurs and innovators. One thing has been overwhelmingly clear. There are a lot of passionate people with social impact ideas that need access to the skills or expertise of others to make them happen. To help solve this problem, we've opened up 5Y Impact Collective to a larger community on Slack. We have around 70 members since its creation in May. So if you're interested in learning more and joining the community, please check out this link. I'll wait a second so you can screenshot it if you're interested. I can share it at the end if needed. So it looks like I have 3 different jobs, and I kind of do. But at the end of the day, they all have the same goal. And that is who I am as a professional problem solver. Remember this. Right now, it's the coronavirus's dream come true, but 6 months ago, it might have been your commute. My journey felt a lot like this. It was stressful, crowded, uncomfortable. I wasn't sure if I made the right decision for my destination or the way that I decided to get there. In fact, I didn't know that what I do now as a career was a career most of my life. So I was definitely wrong about the destination. Up to 85% of the jobs that today's college students will have in 11 years haven't yet been invented. So the jobs of the future don't yet exist. That means that not only is your career path going to be completely different from mine, so is your destination. So as we discussed, this is who I am today. I'm going to take you through who I have been along the way. Starting with my favorite class in high school, which was media studies. I was really fascinated by the way messaging in media could impact behavior. I wanted to learn more in university, so I applied to the closest program I could find, which was communication studies at Laurier. I had 2 co-op terms, writing speeches for the Ministry of Northern Development and Mines and doing corporate communications at Ontario Power Generation. I realized when I was in those roles that something was missing for me. So I went back to my 3rd and 4th year at university and volunteered for all the things I could find. The roles I felt most comfortable in held an aspect of creativity and strategy in them. At the same time, I was working part-time as a hostess at a fancy restaurant, and I was creating a truly great customer experience for the first time. Now, Laurier is known for its business program, so there was a lot of teasing that you have to study business to get a job. I started looking at MBAs, but there was something missing. The programs at the time focused heavily on profit and not enough on people. They have improved since, for the record, but at the time they were very much, you love numbers and money. I stumbled upon the Master of Design in Strategic Foresight and Innovation program, and it was like the skies opened up. It was the perfect program, and it was the only program I applied to. Miraculously, I got in, and I got a job in Italy as an excuse to live in Europe for 4 months before starting grad school. So during that time, I visited over 12 European countries, and I was able to encounter different customer experiences and service offerings, expectations, cultural differences across a new continent for the first time. So I started the program as the youngest and one of few people from Canada, let alone the GTA. I was surrounded by extremely impressive people from across the globe, and there was so much to learn from their experiences. So at this point in my life, I was just an imposter. I had an internship that turned into a job as an innovation strategist. I was taking on some cool projects at the same time, not realizing that most people would call that freelancing. So I started freelancing way before I called myself a freelancer. I ran a chapter of a social entrepreneurship competition, and one of the things I did to help promote and support participants was a hackathon weekend with someone who was a pro at running them. So the 2 of us had one phone call 2 days before the weekend and whipped it together, and it was a huge success. And it was my first time really experiencing the magic that can happen during a strategic problem-solving weekend. Hackathons and design jams just like this later became my niche. I had a stint in service design and ended up leading the project briefly before accepting a role as a contractor at RBC. The recruiter encouraged me to incorporate, and it made a lot of sense, so I did. All of a sudden, I had ink at the end of my name. I started thinking of myself as a business owner, and I wanted to do something good with that position in society. So I announced 5Y into existence with support from a few of the first members. After over a year and an amazing experience as a contractor at RBC, I accepted a full-time position in a product role because I wanted to try it out. And that brings us where we are today. Due to popular demand, I'm going to do a bit of an overview of design thinking. We don't have much time, so I will be able to go over it at a high level, and I challenge you to apply it to your careers as a bit of homework. Design thinking has become popular in the past 10 or so years. It's a way of applying a designer's mindset to problems that previously didn't take that approach. I've included the definition here and highlighted a few words that I think are important. The first one is iterative. Kind of like when you have a rough draft for a paper at school. If you're lucky, you have a friend review it, you make a bunch of changes, then you give it to your mom to proofread, you make a bunch of edits, and then you submit. Each of those rounds would be considered iterations. We do the same in a lot of the newer ways of thinking, such as Agile Scrum and design thinking, which is not the way traditional business was doing it. Generating a lot of solutions and creating prototypes, early drafts of a solution that can be tested, is a huge part of this. We like to fail early and often, and learn something as soon as possible before we invest too many resources into it. The next one is understanding the user. This is where the deep research comes in. To understand how people actually behave as opposed to how they say they behave. There are very specific design research methods for this. Then we have challenging assumptions and redefining problems. That means sometimes realizing that you are solving the wrong problem. I'll give you an example. Your client says, build me a boat. One way you could respond is, okay, I'll build you a boat. What do you need in the boat? I'll need $1 million to make that boat. But what if we questioned your client's request? What if we said, why do you need that boat? And they said, to get to the other side of the water. Start to think, okay, well, maybe a bridge would suffice. But we ask further, well, why do you need to get to the other side of the water? They tell us it's to deliver a message. So we start to think maybe a letter, or perhaps the need to build a postage system is the real need, the real problem, and the real way to solve it. Sometimes people get so focused on the solution that they think they need. When we understand them further, we can question assumptions and make sure that we are solving the right problem. This is the most popular process model, but not the only one, referred to as the double diamonds. It's meant to represent divergent and convergent thinking. Oh, is it black for you?
Yeah, it shows up as parts of this slide. Oh, no, it's back.
Oh, that's weird. Okay, well, it was just this slide with a GIF of someone going, so you're not missing too much. The point is, it's about expanding your mind and then converging on to make decisions. So really exploring as many problems or as much information, as much data as possible, and then narrowing in on what's the most important. Sometimes it looks more like this, or a differently extended version. It's important to remember that the process is iterative, so even if your project is at the end of the last diamond, you may not have fully solved the problem. In this example, you see we're first researching, we're learning a lot of things, we have a lot of problems, and then we funnel down and define the most important problem to solve. But we're not done yet. Next, we develop all of the solutions using idea generation techniques before we decide and deliver. Again, there are a lot of steps within the diamonds, but at this time, I just wanted to focus on the bigger picture. The idea of design thinking is to create solutions that exist at the center of these three bubbles: human-centered, based on needs, technologically feasible, and with a business model that is viable. that's not easy. And that's why iteration is key. My advice is to treat your career like a design problem. If you look back at my journey, it can, retroactively, it fits into this model quite well. And I encourage you to try applying it to yours. So first, I was in the discover phase. I was learning what I like, learning what I'm good at. Then I was in the define phase. I learned what I don't like, and I found a program that really spoke to me. And once I had a clearer direction, I was able to try out different roles within it. That's design research, design strategy, service design, and now product. And after mastering some skills, I was confident enough to work as a freelancer and start new ventures. Next up, I iterate. I am going to keep learning and growing and trying new things. So here's how you can apply this mindset to your career. The discovery phase. Don't be afraid to try something you're not sure about. Learn by doing. It's important to learn what you don't like. In fact, it might be just as important to learn what you don't like as it is to learn what you do like. For define, fail fast and learn fast. Face your fears and face it until you make it. Sometimes your niche finds you. There are quite a few examples in the journey that I mentioned where I just announced 5Y into existence or said, okay, let's run a hackathon, and if we fail, we fail, but then we know. And that was probably the most difficult part across the line, and I lost a lot of sleep, but in the end it was so worth it, and being fearless really does pay off. Develop. You're just a prototype at first, so use it to your advantage. What I mean by this is when you're an intern or when you're fresh out of school, let's say you have the title intern. If you succeed and do something mind-blowing, they go, wow, the intern did that? And if you mess up, people are gonna say, oh, well, they're just an intern. No pressure on them. We can't expect too much. So absolutely use that to your advantage. If the bar is low, so it's very easy to surpass, and just kind of take on as many opportunities as you possibly can to show them what you got. Last thing is, all experiences will teach you something. This is about taking on those extra roles, taking on volunteer positions to see what you like and what you're really good at. Lastly, deliver. Keep upskilling, refine and master your skills, then add on to them. This is kind of like increasing fidelity if we were to think of you as a prototype. We start to understand this wireframe is working, so let's make a few decisions on what the buttons look like and what colors, etc. So this is you increasing fidelity of your career. My journey felt a lot like this. It was stressful. I wasn't sure if I made the right choice, and it was uncomfortable. But it didn't matter which direction I was heading. What mattered was that I was moving, and I was learning along the way. Most career paths are not linear. You may feel lost along the way, and that's okay. Learn from it. So my advice to you is to enjoy the ride. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roxy, for this very heartfelt sharing of your career path and also about design thinking. I think a lot of us resonate with you a lot because life is just trial and error, and from each iteration we learn and grow a little bit. And eventually I hope everyone gets to their destiny, like their dream job or their dream goal. So yeah, let's move on to the exciting part. I should probably not say this. No, your presentation is very exciting, but the Q&A section is equally exciting. So let's head to the Q&A section. So people, Q&A session with Roxy. We gathered the questions collected from the registration forms, and we hope that those questions are really informative to you. So I'll just move down to the first one. How is the commercialization process of a new product in industry, and what is a product manager's role in that?
Okay, So I'm assuming what's meant by commercialization is bringing things to market. And you probably found this on my LinkedIn or something, because that was certainly a new word to me before I got into this role. Assuming that's what you mean, owning a product is not unlike owning a business. When you're bringing a product to market, it includes pretty much all of the steps that you would expect for bringing a business to market. So starting off with idea generation, market research, design, prototype development, but then it comes to all of the trial and error. So you're doing initial testing and maybe a pilot program, then you modify and you're doing redevelopment, and you put it out to maybe a larger market, and you bring it back and you change a few things, and larger and larger and larger. And beyond that, it's also developing a marketing plan and marketing the product. So working for a bank adds some steps. For example, sending every piece of text for translation, because we are a Canadian bank. And every time maybe a startup would be able to just push something out into the world, we have a lot of meetings with legal and privacy to go through. So there are a lot of more steps, the larger the corporation and the larger footprint it has. We have many stakeholders. So what the product manager does is pretty much everything, or at least they're responsible for everything or accountable for it. So if I'm not doing the marketing myself, I'm the one that has to work with the person that is doing the marketing to ensure that the timelines match up with whatever we need delivered at a certain time. We're getting the feedback in the way we need. At that point, I would say it's usually in the hands of a marketing professional, but every step of the way until that point, it is very much accountability on the product manager. I did hear a quote that relates to this on a podcast, and she said, as a product manager, if everything goes wrong, the product manager is accountable. If everything goes right, you had nothing to do with it. So it's a little grim feature, and it's not always like that. But there's definitely a lot of responsibility, and you have to make a lot of calls.
Yeah, when you succeed, it's always the teamwork. So thank you, Roxy, for that answer. And then let's move on to the next one. I think a lot of us are really curious about how to get into the career path of product manager. So what's a good way for beginners to learn and grow in the field of product management?
I'm still a bit of a beginner myself in product role, but as you can probably tell, I'm a big believer in learning by doing. So on the one hand, I say try to get a role. On the other hand, I know that it's not easy to get that role. So 2 pieces of advice. The first one is, well, for myself, I have not 1, but 2 advanced product management certificates. One costs $3,000. The other costs $20. I suggest take as many of the $20 ones to learn as much as you can, to at least understand the fundamentals. And if you feel that additional education or certification is required, by all means, go for it. But I do think that you can get a lot of the knowledge online or through more affordable courses. I have been listening to that podcast I just mentioned, actually, is by the Product School. And there are many events hosted online by something called Product Faculty. I'm sure there are many others as well. If you just searched up product management, like learning or email lists, there's plenty of resources. So the first thing is that. Then the next one is how to get in a position where you can learn by doing. Would be try to get the closest experiences that you can. And perhaps there's a friend of yours that has an idea. They want to launch a startup. If you can volunteer as a product manager as they get off the ground, then you'll be able to try it out without risking too much. And you'll be able to manage a backlog and manage the team, but also create the tasks and understand all of the things that are involved in it.
Great, thank you. So I guess the takeaway is that first do enough research, get the corresponding education, and also like learn by doing, apply those knowledge you learned, and then try to get corresponding experience from it. I think the employers really look for like your passion and experience out of what you do. Let's move on to the next question. So what is the structure of your team and how do you lead effectively with team members of different roles and backgrounds?
First, different roles and backgrounds. Just treating everyone as an individual with unique skills that you appreciate. Acknowledging that they know things that I don't know and vice versa so that we can learn from each other. I think positive reinforcement is just as important, if not more important, than negative reinforcement. A team that feels appreciated will do their best work. And if they don't receive any kind of feedback except for negative feedback or when something goes wrong, that's going to be a completely different culture on a team than one that is receiving a lot of gratitude and positive feedback. So that kind of leads into my next part of the question. My structure of the team varies depending on the project, but I don't actually believe that the structure is as important as the culture. One structure that I did see being very successful in a past role had a product owner, a business analyst, a tech lead, 6-ish developers, and then the design team was shared. So there was content design, interaction design, and design research, which was me at the time. And so that was an amazing experience, and I can speak a little bit more about that. But what I really think was so amazing about that was the culture. It was just a culture of collaboration, and everybody attended all of the same ceremonies and kind of spoke the same language. I think we all felt a certain level of ownership over the product that we were building, and that's what made it successful.
I think that's a very fantastic answer, because most of the time we were just being very curious about the structure of the team while neglecting the fact that actually the team spirit is a crucial part for achieving your success. So most of the time when we look for a job, probably try to fit in with the team spirit. And I think that will also give you a lot of positive energy when you're working. Let's move on to the next question. What are the core qualities that you and the product team would look for in a candidate?
Depends on the candidate position, but just broadly speaking, assuming that the candidate had whatever capabilities were required for the role, similar to what you were just saying and what I was saying for the last question, it's all about someone that fits within the culture, is collaborative. I think for me, it's the balance between working independently, that we won't have hand-holding or too much needing to check in, like, is it done yet? Is it done yet? But at the same time, open to collaboration and open to feedback, and kind of not someone that's going to go away, do the work, and come back with a big reveal. For me, what works best is someone that can start something, but then they're willing to work with you to improve it throughout the process. So that kind of attitude, I say, is really what I would look for.
That's actually a very interesting trait, like personality. But how can you like recognize that personality trait when you like have a meeting with a candidate?
Usually I think that's what the behavioral questions are for. So they say, tell me about a project that you worked on, or tell me about a time. And that's when you can understand how someone worked with other people. If it's all me, and I did this all by myself, then you can tell that it was a different vibe. And asking more questions about what kind of experience do you have as a design researcher working with developers. So for example, when I was a design researcher, it took extra time, and it wasn't always possible. But when I could, I would hold a session and have everybody on the team, regardless of role, brainstorm questions that they would want to ask people at different levels of the organization in order for us to achieve our goal. And so those questions actually made it into the script, and they were all invited to be note takers or sit in on the interviews as they were happening. So if somebody wanted to get involved, there were no secrets, and they were welcome to get involved. And that's, I think, the kinds of stories that I would look for, just because I've seen how well it works when a team is just that transparent with everything that's going on.
Awesome. Let's move on to the next question. Design thinking generally takes a lean approach when it comes to data collection. I'm curious to hear about your opinions on how design thinking fits into the world of big data.
Cool. Lots to unpack here. So the first one is design thinking takes a lean approach when it comes to data collection. I think what you're saying here is that design research tends to have smaller sample sizes. That is because of the qualitative nature of design research. It posits that the value of 10 in-depth interviews, watching someone behave with an app, or kind of just sharing their stories will give them richer data than, say, 100 quantitative survey responses. So this is why there's not a one-size-fits-all. There's a lot of different research methods, of course, and an experienced researcher will be able to make the call on that. So broadly speaking, if a design thinker that's not trained in research is conducting research, then maybe you could have some poor quality. But in the best practice, you would have somebody that does have those chops, and they would know how to collect the correct data for the correct study. So for how design thinking fits into the world of big data, I think the value design thinking can bring to the world of big data is the human-centered lens. So a little bit of the why behind the numbers, and that's again where the qualitative data comes in.
I've also read some articles about nowadays the team is combining those big data methods like machine learning, artificial intelligence, combined with qualitative research, just to give a fuller picture. I was wondering if you have any experience with that?
Definitely. And I can't really say too much because it's confidential, but we do a lot of, on my team, it's the emerging tech lab, and we also have a voice lab and a blockchain lab. As part of emerging tech, we do machine learning and all that fun stuff. So we do that big picture thinking with machine learning, absolutely.
Yeah, I guess that's answers to the question about big data combined with qualitative research. Let's move on to the next question. How do we include diversity and inclusion at the framework of UI UX roots?
Oh, I could go on for days about this. It's getting kind of dark, so I'm gonna actually turn on the light if that's okay. Give me 1 second.
For those of you who just joined, so I guess we can reiterate that these days, today and tomorrow, we have the Canada Scholar Strike that is fighting against racism towards Black and Indigenous people. So definitely everyone take a look at canadaScholarStrike.ca. And yeah, we have Roxy back on.
I tried to sit near the natural lighting, but it got dark, so that didn't work. Okay, so yeah, I could go on for days about this, but I'll try to keep it quick. UX as a discipline should without a doubt seek out diversity of thought, lived experiences, race, gender, identity, abilities, all the things. It seems like a no-brainer for research to recruit as such, but beyond that, there are things that we can do. The first one is with a title that includes user experience, the acknowledgement that you will never be able to truly understand someone's experience. I think people doing the kind of work where they attempt to learn from and translate other people's experiences should check their own privileges constantly. Another thing is most people in design research type roles have ethics and inclusive design training, but because some people come to it through different paths, it's not guaranteed. So I think that kind of information should be sought out. In general, people should be doing the work to unlearn and listen. I believe that will have an impact in the way that they do their work. Another thing is to promote the fact that inclusive design is for everyone. So I think people often think of it as an edge case, but in reality, there are situational and temporary disabilities in addition to permanent ones. So for example, the the button that you press to open the door for wheelchairs is not just for people in wheelchairs. Especially during COVID, everybody has been using them. But if you've ever had your hands full, or if you've broken your leg in a temporary situation, I'm sure that you've also used that. So that's just one example. If that button wasn't there, it would be hurting a lot of people that didn't know they needed it. Also, the business case for this may be helpful in getting your employer on board. Lastly, simply addressing the biases inherent in the work you're doing can go a long way to audiences that have the privilege to not think of that. For example, if you're doing 10 interviews, you can get a mix of gender identities and race, but if I'm doing the interviews in Toronto in English, who am I excluding? There are going to be people that cannot drive to the GTA, that do not speak English, etc. So acknowledging that and acknowledging those limitations in small scale research and making sure that they are followed up upon or scaled up to get more of a broad range. Again, I could go on for days, but there are two people that do really great work and talk a lot about these topics. So one of them is Viviane Castillo, and the other one is Sakay Farai, Farai. You should follow them, they're awesome.
Thank you, Roxy. I think we should all be aware of the diversity and inclusion topic when we're doing either research or we're working in an industry, and especially a lot of us, I believe, come from the background of data science, artificial intelligence. Most of the time we're working at black box classifiers models, and we definitely need to consider doing qualitative research to include those who are the minorities and those who are normally neglected. I think we're done with the Q&A, the prepared question list. Let's now move to the live questions on Slido.
Perfect.
Sorry to jump.
Names. So that was Viviane, like Vivian with an extra N and E at the end. Castillo, Castillo, and Sekaiffarai.
Great, thank you. Sorry, I'm on full screen mode, so I cannot see anyone like raising questions, but feel free to chime in, open your mic. Let's move on to the Slido live questions. The first one, how did you make a personal brand and obtain new clients when you first started your startup? Like, zoom in a little bit.
How did I make a personal brand and obtain new clients? Honestly, being a good person. Being a good person to work with. I think my reputation kind of preceded me, so that helped, and that people would just invite me to join them. I've never gone looking for clients, and that's not something a lot of people can say, so very happy with that. And personal brands, I think that's something I'm always working on. In fact, I take any kind of educational or opportunity to revisit the way that I'm branding myself or things in general. So right now I'm doing a week-long free, like some kind of like website course. One of those things that they'll advertise to you on Instagram. Like, I'm doing it to see if I can learn how to improve my website. And I have learned a few things already. I think my biggest challenge actually for my personal brand is that I do so many things. So it's hard for me to just brand myself as one because I don't want to exclude the other things.
That's awesome. I come from mainland China, and then when I first came here, I realized that everyone is so big about like personal branding, and I think many of us who are students should start earlier about like making yourself a brand. And I think Roxy is a really good role model for doing that. Everyone follow Roxy with her Roxy Design webpage and also Lifelike Impact Collective. Next question. Where did you find that $20 certification?
Udemy. I don't remember the names of the people, but there's two of them that run it. One of them's a blonde guy, and I don't know why I can't even remember what the other one looked like, but they're funny and they're really good storytellers. Yeah, worth the $20 for sure.
Thank you for the answer. I guess Whoever that person who raised this question, you're not doing enough research. Let's move on to the next question. Can you walk us through the product development process from an idea to POC to product landing? I think it's a really big question.
Yeah. Yes, I can. Do we have time?
Yeah, of course. I think a lot of people are really interested in that topic, so we can probably spare more time for that.
Okay. So I'm trying to think of an example. They all go so differently, but I'll just say kind of the ideal process would be, if I'm a product manager, I would want to gather the team and start generating ideas to a problem together. Or, I mean, in corporate land, you're usually given the problem and sometimes you're even given a solution and you have to push back. So ideally, we would be the ones that discover the problem, do the research in it, and then do some ideation around problem solving. So let's say we have an idea and we think it can stand. The next thing is market research to actually make sure that it's viable. So this is where the numbers come in. And we have to say, okay, we have this idea for a map of eco-friendly restaurants. What other maps exist? What other sources for eco-friendly restaurants exist? How do people in these eco-friendly communities communicate? So like things that are a little bit more broad than you might expect. And also, how do people interact with those? Also, what is the market? How much are people paying for ads on this? Are people more likely to pay in order to get someone in their restaurant through this source, as opposed to where they can be on Google for free? I'm totally making this up, so it's not making too much sense, but basically, are people willing to pay for it? What is the business model going to be? Is this really worth our time and energy? Then we go into design, which is a process of its own. Let's just say we whipped out a beautiful prototype. So the next step is the initial testing. Perhaps we're doing something online, like usertesting.com is a great one, where people can click through your prototype and complete tasks. They can speak out loud. So they might say, oh, I'm supposed to do this, but I can't figure out where the button is, or I think this information is telling me this. And by that, you can understand what needs to be changed, what makes sense and what doesn't. Let's say we do all of that, it goes well. The next step is actually piloting it, and actually building it. So if we only have the front end or the prototype, then we're gonna have to actually build the stuff behind it. So that would happen. I'm just like, magical world, that happens. And then we're doing rounds of piloting and making sure that we are measuring the right things. So what does success look like? Success may look like, if my device is within 2 meters of yours, I will get a beep. So we can test that with 2 people, but we're also going to need to run a test with 5 people, and we're also going to need to run a bigger one. There's an app that we're working on right now that we're launching internationally. So we did interviews with the Asia Pacific market, and something important to think about is it relates to COVID. So their COVID protocols are very different than Canada's, and we had to change the app based on what was going on in their world versus what's going on in our world. So just so many things to think about. What else is there? Further modification always. Let's just say everything's successful, we market it, and then there's watching the say Google Analytics or whatever kind of analytics are on it to see what's working and what's not, and continuously improve it. Also depends on what kind of engagement the product would be. If it's something that your team is, like, say, working on but then giving off to another group, which my current team does sometimes, then maybe what I explained was enough. But on my old team, we owned it forever. So we're always seeing where we can improve and how can we modernize this? How can we, and then we're kind of looking at how we might be able to change behavior. Like, how can we get more people to sign up to a newsletter? Things like that. So yeah, there's a lot of things, but hopefully that gave a decent timeline.
Yes, thank you so much for this comprehensive explanation. I myself learned a lot since I have zero background in it. Yes, so another question, you seem to be on multiple projects. How do you manage or prioritize your time?
Oh, I don't, I'm a workaholic. Next. Well, it's true, I don't, I had a problem. But how do I manage my time? Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that out. I don't have the answer. But what I am planning to do is to take on less freelance tasks and focus more on my full-time job and on 5Y. And I supportive people along the way. I don't have the answer because I don't do it right. I don't know if anybody does, but what I'm working on is saying no to more things. So that's something, if I could, in retrospect, if I could say no to more opportunities, then it would save me a lot of time.
I can't resonate with you more with saying no, because I used to taking a lot of stuff just because I want to be the nice person, but later on I realized that actually it's taking up too much of my time. So I hope everyone can learn from that too. Another question, how do big companies take their employees' personal projects in a startup? Will they be concerned on the time distribution? That seems very specific.
I was initially a contractor. So RBC was my client. It was after I incorporated. And so RBC was like, we need the service from you. So that was the model, even though I was there Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, just like full-time employees. Technically, they were my client. So after that, when I accepted the full-time, I disclosed to my manager and I said, as you know, I have this and I have this going on. And so I had to make sure that there was no direct competition, and there really wasn't. So we're okay, but if anything that were to be a risk of competition, like another bank wanted my time, I probably would not be able to work with them. At the very least, I would have to disclose it, but if it was something a little farther away, but another bank would definitely be a no-no. I think in general, I know a lot of people at RBC that have their own side hustles. Nothing like direct competition, but you know, they'll have like a streetwear brand or something like that. So I think people are generally supportive. If you have the entrepreneurial instincts, they want you to explore that.
Sounds good. Do you have any specific suggestions for turning ideas into commercial products? Can you give an example?
What do we mean by commercial products? Is it something, I guess I'll ask you to, is it something on a shelf, or do we mean like a digital product that is attaining revenue?
Something can make money, I guess.
Okay. Okay, so now let me reread the question.
I'm not sure, I'm just taking a guess here.
Ideas. Business modeling and business model validation. And I'm just gonna leave it at that. You can Google a lot of techniques for business model validation, and sometimes there are a lot of hacks that can be done that relate to somewhat analytics. So for example, you might get an advertisement that says, you should take my course on this. Click here to get on the wait list. Once you click, you give them your email, there might be no course. They might just be seeing how many people sign up. And then they say, okay, we have 100 people, let's make a course. And that's one little example of one way you can validate a business model. So if you think people are willing to pay for it, see how you can test that before going through the effort of building a thing.
I think that's a really great, brilliant answer. I think a lot of us just want to see the product happen without really doing research on the market and see if there's an actual need for it. I think definitely we need to like think twice and do some research before heading into the huge hustle and huge time effort. Have you had team members who have a different educational background, values that they bring, and could a STEM biology major get a data-focused role?
Yes, I've certainly had team members with different educational backgrounds. I would say every team member that I work with, it's never somebody that's me. I'm usually the only me. So I work with a lot of different people with different educational backgrounds, the values they bring. Because it's such a diverse team, I mean, every single person brings something unique. But I think the example I provided was a good way of kind of showcasing the way that in my old role, I would be responsible for something and I would have a certain skill set, but I would want to hear from others and they might think of things in a different way than I do. We would also swap roles, and I did like a JavaScript challenge and one of the developers helped me. I failed miserably, but she still helped. And we're just, yeah, there's so much to learn from other people. What values could a STEM biology major get a data focused role? Yes, absolutely. There are a lot of similarities in the data collection in science and data science, and I know pretty much nothing about the two, but I do know that a friend of mine is doing her PhD in seismic, like rock stuff. I call her a rock doctor. I don't even know what it is, but it's very science focused. And she by day is a data scientist at RBC. So, and when I asked her about it, that's exactly what she said. She said the data collection methods are the same. It's just digital data as opposed to data on rocks. So absolutely. And it's all really about storytelling. If you were to apply to a data science role, and you had a science background, just tell the story on how you can apply your skills to that role.
I guess that also speaks to this question here as like the work environment, the collaborative environment in RBC. Can we jump to this question like and then come back to the previous question? So do you recommend working at RBC? How has your experience been with RBC so far?
Oh yeah, I've had a great experience with RBC. RBC is obviously huge. So the experiences that I've had have been in two little pockets, and I can't speak for all of it. I'm sure that some of it is very traditional banky, but the two places that I have worked were so forward thinking and innovative and fun. They were just frankly fun. So yes, I absolutely recommend working at RBC.
I guess the next difficult part for people is to get into RBC, and then you'll enjoy working at RBC, definitely. Let's move to the previous question. Where can we find incubations for startups in Toronto? Any recommendations? I guess if you're from U of T people, like there's this, we have like Hatchery, which is like an incubation for startups. But yeah, let's hear Roxy's answer.
Honestly, I don't have a huge list. I wish I did. But there is one program that some friends of mine participated in, and I was a mentor at, that was kind of like a free incubator, or I think it was like $15. It's called Cooperaton. It's run by Desjardins. And the way that it worked in the past was in person. So I can't speak to the digital version this year, but they worked in sprints. And so they went through essentially those 4 different phases that I showed you. They would have kind of like someone speaking to it, and then you would work on incubating or either building or creating whatever kind of social enterprise. So it was socially focused, but that one I thought was really great for your money because the teams were mentored by a lot of great people. They got a lot of great education, and it was like $15, and you could win a lot of money in sponsorship. So that one I know is going on soon. Other than that, I would just Google. I'm sorry. I don't know many.
Yeah, I think a good way to get the answers to those questions is just simply Googling. And I think there are a lot of like online communities that can support you. Probably also go look for a meetup. And I think another question is about the Fly community. So what's the ideation strategy at Fly?
Ideation strategy. I'm not sure what this is asking, but I will explain a little bit more and hopefully it will answer the question.
I guess people just really want to hear about the 5Y collective.
So 5Y was initially 5 members that would take on socially impactful projects. And that was kind of it. We had no real criteria. We're like, if there's something that's going to make a difference and we want to do it, we're going to do it. But we all had full-time jobs. So the projects were going a little bit slowly. And then a global pandemic hit. So it was the perfect opportunity to bring it online and see what kinds of things would be formed. So we don't have, I wouldn't say we have a formal ideation strategy, but we do have open idea space channels where someone can say, hey, I've been thinking of starting this startup to connect mental health resources to something. And people will be able to comment either that they're interested, that they can offer services, or that it's a horrible idea. And the goal is to have ideas build themselves from within the community. It was previously when people would invite 5Y to something, it would be me. I was the face of 5Y. So they would be inviting Roxy plus whoever she could round up. And so I didn't want that anymore. I really wanted it to be a community, like with or without me. I will create it and facilitate it, but I really wanted it to live without me. And the people there are really awesome. So I'm really just hoping that more connections form and ideas build, and I'll be available if they need me.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Roxy. I think today we have a huge audience who's coming from a design background or UI UX psychology background. So if you're interested, feel free to join Firefly Impact Collective, especially the Slack channel, because they actually have a channel that introduce people randomly every week, so you can get connected on the platform and maybe find your future partner in your startup. I know this because I sneaked in a long time ago.
Did you?
Yes. So people definitely keep an eye out for 5Y. And also, Roxy, if you could type in the chat box on your bit.ly, it would be great. And I think we are running out of time today. So thank you so much, Roxy, for your time. And we cannot be more grateful for you coming here. And you're a very established woman role model for all of us. So everyone, enjoy the rest of your night. And thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me and for creating this series. I've just posted a link to the Medium article that provides a little bit more of an overview, just saying what this is not, because we only want people to join that, you know, are fully on board and want, that really align with the purpose of it. So at the very bottom, once you read that, there's a link to join. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Roxy.
Bye.
Bye.